Good morning, students. This is the first revision video of the chapter Nationalism in India. And this video has been made for class 10th. Now in this video, we will try to understand that how nationalism started in India when India was under the control of Britain. And after that, we will also discuss the different type of mass movement. And before that, we will try to understand the causes of the mass movement or the circumstances that led to the mass movement. So let us discuss the meaning of nationalism first. So nationalism is the feeling of oneness among the people living in a territory or in a piece of land. Here we need to understand that when Britishers came here, India was not united. There was no feeling of oneness among the different people. And that is why Britishers became successful in ruling India. Now after that, people came together and they revolted or they resisted the British Empire, and finally they became united, and this is how the Britishers moved away from our country. So let us discuss more in this particular chapter. Now story starts with the First World War. When the First World War started, it started in 1914. So it created a lot of impact on different countries including India. As India was the colony of Britain, it was also influenced by the First World War. So when First World War started, the Britishers got involved, and as a result, the India also got involved indirectly. So what was the impact? So let us discuss the impact the World War created in India and how the economic and political situation changed in India. So let us discuss here. The British imposed war expenditure on India. Income tax was introduced and custom duties were raised. We need to understand, once the war expenditure increased, the question was from where the money will come. And for that, for getting the money, the Britishers imposed war expenditure on Indian revenue. And after that, income tax was also introduced in India. And thereafter, finally, custom duty was increased. Similarly, prices of essential goods doubled during the war period, as most of the food grains were diverted towards the war area. So the result was that price of the essential goods increased, or it became doubled during the war period. So this was the second impact. Now third was the most complicated thing, was the forced recruitment that was going on by the Britishers. Many farmers, many weavers were forcibly recruited in the British army to serve them in the war. And at last was the crop failure resulted in the shortage of food materials. And at last, but not the least, it was the influenza epidemic that is spread in many parts of India, and because of that, millions of people lost their lives. So what we saw here, that first war created a very negative impact on political and economic situation of India. So let us discuss more in this particular impact. What we saw that problem became more complicated in India when World War first started, and Indians got indirectly involved in the war. So we can see how India got involved and what was the impact on Indian situation. Now let us discuss what happened thereafter. When this war was going on, and in between the war, that is in 1915, Gandhiji came from South Africa and he led various movements here. So when he came here, he organized his three important Satyagraha movement. We'll discuss the meaning of Satyagraha later on, but here we need to understand that when Gandhiji came in 1915, he led three important movements. One in 1916, Champaran movement. Second was 1917, Kheda movement, and thereafter it was the Ahmedabad Mill Workers movement. So these particular movement finally projected Gandhiji as the mass leader, and Gandhiji became very popular, and after that he became successful in launching the non-cooperation movement. So let us discuss here the first three Satyagrahas movement that was organized by Gandhiji in India. In 1916, the indigo planters were facing the problem in Champaran. It was a small district in Bihar, and here the planters were facing much problem. So it was a movement of workers in the indigo plantation of the Champaran district of Bihar, and it was against the oppressive plantation system. So why this system was the oppressive system? So in this particular system, Tin Khatia system was there. And what was in the Tin Khatia system? In the Tin Khatia system, out of 20 kathas, 3 kathas was fixed for growth of or for development of indigo plantation. and that was to be done on the best part of the land. And if the crop was not up to the mark, the payment was not given to the peasants. So this was the problem here. Apart from that, many heavy taxes were also imposed on the planters. Now, Gandhiji moved there, and finally he launched Satyagraha movement and became successful also, and finally the indigo plantation or the Tinkatia system was removed from Champaran. Later on in 1970 he moved towards Kheda. He found that crop failure was there, plague was there, and it is made the life of the farmers very miserable. So he started the movement, and finally he fulfilled his demand to reduce the land revenue. Similarly, in the mill worker of Ahmedabad, the problem was that low wages was there, and the poor mill workers were working in a very unhygienic situation, and they were forced to work in the mill. So finally, Gandhiji came here, and he also organized a movement here under the different types of leaders, and finally Gandhiji got success here also. So these three movements made him very successful, and finally he became a mass leader. Now, meanwhile, when he was moving with his Satyagraha movement, at the same time in 1919 one important incident took place in India. And what was that incident? Britishers passed one law. That law was termed as the Rowlatt Act. So what was specific about the Rowlatt Act, we need to understand here. This act was termed as the Black Act. Why? Because this act allowed Britishers to put any suspicious Indian behind the jail for 2 years, and there would be no trial for this. So many protests sprang up in Punjab in response of this, and many were put behind the jail who were revolting, who were actually criticizing this particular act. So Britishers passed one act in order to curb the freedom of Indians. So this act was termed as the Black Act because here no appeal was there and no trial was there against this particular arrest. So this Rowlatt Act created a lot of problem, lot of anger among the Indians, and finally Indians got assembled to protest this. So when the protest was going on, we need to understand here, when the protest was going on, Gandhiji decided to observe All India Hartal on 6th of April. And finally, on 13th of April, in 1919, a Jallianwala Bagh massacre took place. So Jallianwala Bagh massacre is one of the most brutal and glory event in India's history that resulted in the death of around 1,000 people. What accelerates the incident gravity is the fact that the British soldiers under acting Brigadier General Dyer had opened fire in front of the mass innocent unarmed people. In the year 1919, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre had occurred on the day of the Baisakhi, a major Punjabi festival, on 13th of April. Since then, on this day, people of India remember the lives of numerous people who died that day and those who remained alive to recount the horror. So we need to understand here, this incident reminds us that what was the intention of Britishers, with what intention they created fear in the mind of Indians, what was their intention to rule India, how they were treating Indians. So we came to understand here that Jallianwala Bagh was the hallmark, it was the turning point in the Indian history, and it became the last coffin, or it created the last nail in the coffin of Britishers. And finally, because of that, the Indians got ready, the Indians became united, and they started the mass movement against the Britishers. So when Gandhiji launched the non-cooperation movement, that was the mass movement. It was not this movement started overnight. A lot of reason was there behind this movement, and Jallianwala Bagh, Rowlatt Act was one of the important reasons. So we need to understand here that Rowlatt Act, Jallianwala Bagh, and all these important events created lot of responses, a lot of elements for the upcoming movement. That was the non-cooperation movement. So we will discuss about non-cooperation movement in the upcoming segment here, and we need to understand that we'll discuss here. So this is all about, in this video we'll discuss about the non-cooperation movement and its impact in the next video. Thank you so much.